In the 1980s, Margaret Thatcher thought of something incredible, revolutionary even. She dared to think that government should be run like a business. Now, for the folks in this room, this idea is old news. However, for folks back in the 80s, this was truly groundbreaking. She promoted a new paradigm of public administration that highlighted the failures and inadequacies of public sector performance, and more importantly, she pointed to the problems that arose from the nature and processes of public sector activity. The Iron Lady forced a generation to rethink the Iron Lady forced a generation to rethink how government works and to look for new ways of improving the public administration through new public management. So for the purposes of this pitch, I won't go into all of the details of new public management, or for that matter, if it's actually a good idea to run the government like a business, but it's important to know this. New public management was an attempt to make the public service more business-like, which, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, means to make government lean and more competitive, while at the same time trying to make public administration more responsive to citizens' need by offering value for money, choice flexibility, and transparency. So like with the private sector, which focuses on the customers, new public management focused on the centrality of citizens who were the recipients of government services, the customers of the public sector. And while we may be separated by an ocean, it didn't take too long for Canada to adopt this approach as well. New public management transformed the Canadian public administration, and its effects are still noticeable today through similar paradigms such as deliverology. The problem, however, is that new public management was confined to the public administration. But can it be useful elsewhere? Let's get straight to the point here. I am a fourth-year student in public administration and political science, and if you ask me what my MP or MPP does, I can tell you, but only in theory. In theory, elected officials are supposed to bring the voices and the concerns of constituents to the government decision-making table and act on pressing issues accordingly. But what does that actually mean? If you ask me what my MP or MPP does on a day-to-day basis, I honestly couldn't tell you. Could you folks? Or perhaps what we want to know is not what are they doing, but how they are doing. But is that even important? Is it relevant even? Well, according to Canada's new plan on open government 2016-2018, open government is increasingly becoming a global priority, and governments around the world are taking advantage of digital technologies to advance transparency and make information more readily accessible to the public. So in Canada, the growth of open data initiatives represents a larger trend towards more open, transparent, and accountable government. While each jurisdiction in Canada may be progressing at a different pace, there is clearly a national movement underway to develop these open data initiatives. Results of the 2016 Open Cities Index confirmed that Canada's municipalities are on the right track to open data maturity, and that municipalities of all sizes are more engaged and committed to open data. At the provincial level, there are a slew of open data initiatives. To name one, the Government of Ontario's Open Government Partnership Action Plan. And finally, at the federal level, we have the Liberal government's electoral platform, a new plan for a strong middle class, and one of its 5 promises relates to making our government more fair and open. So I say that in the most nonpartisan, politically neutral way as possible, okay? Okay. So are we doing enough? Are citizens really able to get a grasp on their elected officials' performance? Well, one might argue that the rise of politicians' use of social media, like Twitter, Facebook, or even Snapchat, some are getting really creative, is a step in the right direction. It may be, but however, and once again, this tells us what they are doing, but rarely how they are doing. It's hard to be accountable in 140 characters or less. So what I'm proposing is simple, very simple actually. I'd like to know what and how my elected officials are doing. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce the Polidash. The Polidash is a tool that would provide at-a-glance a style view of KPIs, key performance indicators, relevant to elected officials' activities. It could be located on the website of the elected official in question, for example, under a new tab, or all the polydashes of all the MPs and MPPs could be centrally located on the same website. The elected official would therefore have to set clear goals, as clear as possible, and periodically update their Polidash to demonstrate progress or explain setbacks. Information needs to be easily digestible, but there should be an option to read or see more for folks who have the extra time or who are interested. But in all honesty, what really matters is the philosophy behind the Polidash, that the activity of elected officials be open and transparent by default. Citizens could then measure the progress of elected officials as they did with new public management in public administration. The Polidash is only one way to increase transparency and accountability. I firmly believe that all elected officials should keep finding meaningful ways to engage with their communities and report back on their progress, in whatever way, shape, or form that may look like. As citizens, our greatest power is exercised at the ballot box. Wouldn't it be nice if we could make our power that much greater? If we could make more informed decisions? This is what I am proposing. This is my vision. Although we bade farewell to Margaret Thatcher in 2013, we should not forget her thought leadership, that public institutions should be accountable to their citizens, that the activity of government, including elected officials, be transparent by default. The Polidash puts the citizen back in the center of it all. It would provide elected officials with a chance to demonstrate why they should be re-elected and provide citizens with the most powerful of weapons, knowledge. Merci. Thank you.
Merci, Alana.